All right, welcome. Can everyone hear me back there if I don't stand right in front of the microphone? Perfect. My name is Dan Allen. I'm with MRB Group. We are an engineering firm in Rochester and have some other satellite offices around the state. You'll have to excuse me if my voice gives out here. Somewhere between Rochester and here, I managed to swallow a frog. Not sure why that happened, but we'll give it our best. We are an engineering firm that has a strong presence in the municipal sector. We represent close to 100 municipalities in New York State. So out of that, I get a lot of opportunity to do a lot of really neat things with GIS. And one of the things that we've noticed a strong trend lately is municipalities interested in doing mobile GIS in the field. So what we're going to present here today in our 20-minute time, which I'll remind myself to set my timer here so I don't run long. All right. So if you hear this like death bomb noise going off, it's my timer. Be alarmed. All right. So some of the other sessions that we've had already today and yesterday have focused on different ways you can do mobile. There's the open source method. There's many of the vendors that you see out in the conference room, main conference room there, that you can do sort of a customized approach. And then there's kind of the third approach, which is kind of using the out-of-the-box ESRI solution. So I'll leave that up to you as to deciding which method you want to go about using. Today I'm going to show you this is how to use Collector. And basically this is kind of like a case study. The first real time we've thrown it to the wolves and given it a try, and I'll kind of interject where it worked, where it didn't work, where they're going to enhance things, and kind of go from there. So our guinea pig is the town of Ontario, which is kind of a bedroom community to the city of Rochester, kind of halfway between Rochester and Syracuse. It's home to a nuclear power plant, if that makes any difference to you. You may have heard of that before, the Guinea plant. But because they're close enough to Monroe County, they are considered an urbanized area, which means they fall under the Stormwater Phase II regulations, which means they now have an obligation to go out and inspect their stormwater outfalls and their detention ponds, I believe it's the yearly basis. So the problem is, last year we did the inspections, and what we were left with was this giant stack of paper that now sits in my filing cabinet taking up space, which you can tell I'm really happy about from the sarcasm of my voice. The problem with that is there's really, if you've done GIS long enough, you'll know that there's no easy way to map that stack of paper. It's going to take some manual effort, and that's something we're going to try to avoid by using this mobile data collection routine. The other problem we had is that we're taking a picture of every outfall, and there's no real easy way, and there's some software that does time stamping and that kind of thing. Still, you're focused on this process of taking a picture and then trying to attach it to a point. And as a way of recalling that in the future. So we're trying to get some of that out of the way and use this mobile technology to kind of streamline things a little bit. The other problem that we had was we have an inspector going out that may or may not know where all these storm features are that he has to go inspect. So the town already had a very good inventory of all of their utilities. It was a project that we'd done years past where we'd gone out and survey located everything in their entire utility infrastructure system. So the other thing we really lacked was we had paper maps, but we didn't really have a good way of giving them that information so they could use it out in the field. So those are the problems we're trying to accomplish. The opportunity is the town belongs to a stormwater coalition, which they pay membership to, and part of that is the coalition will hire an intern and kind of divvy that intern up around the different municipalities in the coalition to go out and do the stormwater inspections. So I got a call about 2 days before I was ready to leave on vacation that the town was going to have their intern that next Monday. So quickly we made a decision. We've been tinkering around with this ArcGIS Online for a while and wanted to really give it a go. So we made the decision we're going to go ahead and do it. But basically we had 2 days to work out the entire process and get rid of any bugs. So you can tell this how it may end. But we'll spoil the ending right away. So what were our ingredients and our known variables? So working with a firm full of engineers, you get good at problem solving. So you're going through this logical process, and these are the things that we considered. What we had to work with was ArcGIS Online organizational subscription. We did not know whether, we were told that the intern was going to have a smartphone. We didn't know whether it was going to be Android or Apple, so we kind of had that one up in the air. It's kind of a question mark. Two different apps from ESRI to choose from, the ArcGIS app and the Collector app. We had their existing geodatabase with all of their utility information. We had this existing paper form, which you saw in the first slide there. The other thing to take into consideration is that the ArcGIS apps in their current state do not support offline editing yet. So what that means is we knew for 100% certainty from our previous RTK surveying that there was portions of the town along Lake Ontario shoreline that did not get cell service. So we knew that going in that this was not going to be a 100% capable solution because there was no offline editing. So if any of you haven't seen these yet, that's a little screenshot of the ArcGIS app, and that's the other one, the Collector app. You can download those both from the respective Apple or Android markets for free. This was an interesting little map. We went actually onto Verizon's cell coverage website, and you can see this little spot right up there along the lake where a lot of the outfalls actually are. It's right along the lake where they discharge, where they show no service. So that kind of correlates to our in-the-field experience. Oh yeah, by the way, the intern had no experience with GIS. So, given our time constraints and our budget, which was basically zero, we were kind of doing this, the town wanted to get into ArcGIS Online and, further engineer. So we kind of just threw this at them, and so we didn't really have a budget to work with. We had very little time. So customization was pretty much out the window. We were basically going at this with what can we do out of the box ESRI. And I mentioned that we also had 2 days. So yeah, this was fun. Before going on vacation, by the way. So the design process. I'm sorry, I'm going through these really quick here because we only got 20 minutes. ArcGIS Online does not yet support related tables, so your one-to-many relationship, that's kind of out of the window. So the way we went around that was we essentially made a duplicate copy of their stormwater outfall layer and just called it 2013 inspections and stored it in their geodatabase. From there, we added all the additional attribute fields to that point feature class to store all the information we're going to be collecting out in the field. And we also went into the geodatabase and added subtypes so they could have pick lists to basically ensure good quality data that was entered and consistent data. So here's this lovely EPA standard stormwater form that we had used the year before. And you see there's lots of fields there, there's lots of checkboxes. It's actually a 2-page form, front and back. We got to look at the form and realize there was a couple things that didn't really apply. So we basically streamlined it and got rid of what we really didn't need and kind of pared it down a little bit to try to keep the amount of data collected in the field to a minimum. So at that point, we I'm not going to go real in-depth into the actual process, but if you haven't used ESRI's ArcGIS Online, from desktop you have your data loaded in there. There's basically under the file menu you can sign into your ArcGIS Online account and you can publish your data to the cloud. Very straightforward process. So we basically took our stormwater layer, published it to the cloud, made it a private layer so it wasn't open to the public, so we had to, it was protected from anyone going in there and doing anything to it. One other very important thing you have to do either on the desktop side or once it's in ArcGIS Online is you need to go in and enable attachments if you want to store pictures or documents with your features with a mobile app. So that was a very important thing to do. Once your stuff is in the cloud, you then need to consume it in a ArcGIS.com web map. It's a very straightforward, simple process. Once the layers are in your map, you can symbolize them. And we did some other things, such as adding zoom scales, because the way you've set up your ArcGIS.com map, the things that you put into that are also reflected in the mobile app. So things like zoom scales, you set it up in the ArcGIS.com map, those same zoom scales will show up in the mobile app. So we added some additional layers to our map, such as storm sewers and parcels. So that if the stormwater intern wanted to know what an address was, he could click on the parcel, see the owner name, and what the address was. But we didn't want those showing at the high level, so we had them all showing when they were zoomed way in. So we set those zoom scales up in the ArcGIS.com map. And probably I would say the most important thing that we did, if you were to take anything out of this presentation, this next thing, wow, I got everyone's attention now, hopefully. All right. We configure the point features to change color when the inspection was complete. This may seem like something incredibly simple, but the feedback we got was that was incredibly useful. And I'll show you a screenshot in a second. So here's what the data looks like when it is in the ArcGIS cloud, or just different layers in your organizational data. Their feature services. And up the top there is our map that we basically, it's kind of like an MXD file, only in the cloud. So that map is actually what you consume when you open it in the mobile application. And when you click on one of those feature services, and this one's the storm outfall inspections, there's actually a little drop down right there, and there's a little button that says enable or disable attachments. So that's where you're going to go click on your ability to enable attachments. All right, 9 minutes. Back to the most important thing that I almost skipped. So you see here, this is set up in our ArcGIS.com map. They were respecting the ponds and they were respecting the outfalls. When I set up the attribute table, I put in a field called inspection complete and made it yes, no. By default, I set every inspection to no. So just by simply symbolizing the layers in the map, pending inspection, where everything equals no, and inspection complete, everything equals yes. So when they fill out the inspection complete yes, it automatically changes color on the map, and now they have a map full of red and green dots, and the red dots are the ones that the guy still has to go out and inspect. The green ones are the ones that are done. So I said that was a very effective method for the person out in the field to know what they had to do still and what was actually complete. The beauty of these maps, one map, many viewing platforms. So it would function the same whether it was on the Apple app or the Android app. So that took care of that problem of not knowing what device was going to be used. For testing, we opened up the map in both Apple and Android. Everything seemed to work great. We actually created some test inspection points. We put them out in the middle of Lake Ontario so we would know that they were bogus. Used that also for when we trained the intern. We had them doing some testing with these points right out in the middle of the lake. Everything seemed to work fine. So here's our little points out there in the middle of the lake. It was very obvious that they were bogus, so that's kind of what we used for our testing of the set. And this ArcGIS.com web map was also a very great tool because, I'll get to this in a second, sorry about that. Learning curve, we spent 30 minutes with the intern and he had it and he was ready to go. These apps have very, very short learning curves, so do not be concerned about that at all. And neither was his lack of GIS experience. He was an engineering intern, but he seemed to pick it up quick. Initial technical problems are photo attachments and inspections were sometimes not saving. And the reason we were able to realize this is because that web map is connected to the same thing, the same data source that they're editing in real time out in the field. I was able to open the web map back in the office and actually able to follow them real time as he was doing his inspections, and immediately noticed that there were some fields that were not being filled in. So I called him on the phone and asked him what was going on, and he said, this is an example of a completed one. You see here's all our fields that were getting filled in, and then all of a sudden you'd have one where he was completing all the fields and hitting enter, but it wasn't saving information. Long story short, we don't know why. We think it's probably something to do with a specific hardware configuration. He was sort of a techno geek, if that's the right word to use, and he had rooted his Android phone. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. It could have also been a bad network, bad cell connection at the time. So basically the workaround for that was we had him download the ArcGIS Collector App instead. And without any training, he'd never used it before. We were able to sign right in and pick up where he left off. Everything seemed to work great from there on, and we finished all the inspections. And there were, as we expected, a few points along the lake we were not able to get. and he just filled those out in paper form and then entered them back in the office. A couple quick pictures. Here is the ArcGIS map app on the right, and there's the Collector app. You see it uses the same map. They look a little different. One has the buttons on the top, the other has the buttons on the bottom, but there's really not a lot of difference at this point between the two of them. One's geared more, the Collector's geared more towards, I think, this inspection type where you're collecting information. The other one's geared a little more towards just viewing it. As you see with the zoom scales, as you zoomed in, different layers of information turn on and off. You can still identify things. So he would go in, basically use the GPS on his phone to walk right to the inspection point that he had to inspect. Click on it, start an editing session, fill out the fields, snap a picture with a cell phone. There's an example of the field list was quite long, so it did take a little while to kind of get through it. I would suggest if you didn't have to have a lot of fields to try to limit that, but in this case we had a certain number of fields we had to fill out, so it was kind of lengthy. Look, basically that's the same thing in the two different apps. One's got a little bit, I kind of like the one on the right a little better. It seemed to be a little more viewable in the bright sunshine, but we ended up going with the Collector app because we seem to have trouble with the other one. And you see down there is a picture. They show up as little, they show up as little attachments down at the bottom. And there's a little close-up. Another thing that we did that turned out to be really useful is we had them turn on geotag photos in the actual phone itself so that it was storing a GPS location with the picture. In case for some reason something didn't work, which if I have enough time to get to that in my 4 minutes, it was good because we could plot a GPS point of all those pictures after the fact as well. So we started out as a town like that, a bunch of red dots, and as we went through the first day, and the second day, third day, and we were done. Seems pretty simple, right? So, now what? We're going to bring the data from the cloud back to a file geodatabase back in the office, generate custom paper reports. That should be easy. Maybe. When I synchronize the inspection data back with the local network, the photo attachments disappeared. So, surprise, something didn't work. When you connect to this map service in ESRI, and you identify a point, when you're hitting the live service, it shows up as an attachment, which you can then open, and there's that same picture. Again, this is being viewed in desktop ESRI. Once I went in and told it to disconnect local copy from server, which now brings it back to my desktop, and you click on that same point, that little attachment thing's gone. Long story short, we called ESRI tech support. They were very helpful. Turns out there was a bug related to the fact that I had used subtypes when I set up my attribute fields. That's supposed to be addressed at 10.2. I was still having some issues with it. There is some Python script workaround, but I'm assuming that this won't be an issue going forward. And that was really the only part of the process that I didn't have a chance to test. And of course, that was the one that came back to bite me the worst. So we had to manually reattach every photo, and by we, I mean we made the intern do it. So it wasn't really that painful for me. But needless to say, I was glad that we had turned on geotagging of the photos, because there's a tool in ESRI's toolbox where you can dump geotag photos and it will automatically create a point for them. So we were able to do that, and it created a point for every photo, and they lined up pretty close to where the actual inspection point was, and it was very easy to correlate which photo went with which inspection. So in the end, we were going to take all that information, use ESRI's report wizard to create a report template to spit out a paper report to meet our obligation to the town. And lo and behold, one more error. Because I was using the picture in the report, and you try to print out like 400 of them, it just made my computer want to cry and go to sleep. So basically we just had to limit the number of, we had to export the reports out in smaller batches, and it got rid of the error. So this is ESRI's report wizard. Basically just set up a little design form, and you suck in the fields from the geodatabase that we filled out. And that's the completed report that gets printed out and that we gave to the town. So you see the photo that we took, comes in down the bottom. I would mention that if you're going to use this report wizard, and if you have multiple photos, that created a real issue. Maybe eliminate one photo. If you get two or three photos, then it starts wanting to expand the report, and it really gets kind of goofy. We've got 1 minute left, so. And back to the initial problem of getting useful information out of that stack of paper, one of the things we're able to do now is because we also collected condition information about each one of those points, once everything was all said and done, we were able to go through and query that information and provide a web map back to the client. And there's all those little red dots are all outfalls that had poor structural conditions. Now they have something that they can go back out and use as a tool to go back out and fix things that are broken. We can also do the same thing. We're going to query of any ones that had, suspected illicit discharge from the stormwater. So again, now instead of just having a stack of paper, now we have a useful tool that we can query and get information out of to give back to the client that they can use. Conclusions. Well, we were able to accomplish our goal without any custom programming. We had a happy client. We were able to put out a quality report, and we had an interactive map with picture attachments. There was some bugs in the process. I wouldn't say they were a deal breaker. I wouldn't let those discourage you from using this process. This is really the way the industry is heading. And, there's the death bomb. So we are on the last slide. Wake everyone up. All right. So, my parting comments is this workflow shows really great promise. The mobile municipal workforce is really where it's at, I think, coming forward here, and I think we're going to have a couple more presentations after this that kind of focus on the same topic. Two other little quick points, and then I'll be done. Offline data editing, from everything I've read from ESRI, is the Collector App will be available in our next release. So all that information you could cram on there and put it on a $150 Android tablet with no data plan and give it to your municipal workforce, and they can go out and enter inspections or just be able to view information out in the field and then synchronize and take it back to Wi-Fi, and that's a really low-cost option. One last point, ESRI is now, I'm not trying to sell ESRI software, I just use it, so I'm going to tell you about it. They've come out and said that with 10.2 on maintenance, you now get complimentary access to ArcGIS Online and 100 credits. Don't ask me what a credit is, you can ask Josh Williams, I'll tell you. So everything, if you have a desktop license of ESRI on maintenance, you can do everything that I did today at no cost. So I encourage you guys to embrace the technology, embrace ArcGIS Online, and give it a try. So I have to leave immediately after this presentation, unfortunately. I won't be around later for questions, but there's my contact information. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Now, we have maybe one or two questions. Sam?
Dan, the one piece in this, and we've had a lot of success with this too. We think it's very promising. The one thing, though, and as we all know, being ESRI clients, the account stuff is a little shaky right now, and as we all try to figure that out, there's virtually no cost to you if you publish without going through the cloud. If your organization has the capacity to publish the feature service itself
with ArcGIS service.
If you're doing server side work yourself, there's no cost to you. You don't have to, and it's virtually completely free. So
the market we're in is we represent a lot of towns and villages that don't have the capacity.
No, I understand,
so
but just so you know, when you have the credits, if you're using the cloud, and that's how kind of ESRI hooks you into that, that's when the meter starts running using your credits. But if you have server side capabilities yourself, you're totally independent of the cloud, and there is no cost.
And if you do want to, further in that topic real quick, if you do want to publish a tiled cache service, you can publish the tiles on the desktop side and then upload them to ArcGIS Online and won't use any of your credits as well. So that's another little.
It's a really great it's a really great workflow.
Maybe one more question, and then I'll be done.
I just wanted to add one thing, and I found this out hard way a couple of times. When you are publishing off your desktop to ArcGIS Online, make sure that you only have the layer that you're going to want to use in your mobile device on your desktop.
Correct.
Because otherwise, you're pushing your whole desktop up.
Very good. Yeah, you only want to have the one or two layers you're going to use. Well, I appreciate you sitting through an hour presentation in 20 minutes. That was a lot of talking by me, so thank you for